This is episode 13 of Distro Delve Season 2, and we're going to be taking a look at Zorin OS 15.2, which was released on March 5th of 2020. Distro Delve is a video series where I review Linux distros while following a checklist which you can view on GitHub. Zorin OS is a bit of a unique distro in many ways, being based on Ubuntu but having its own desktop environment, sort of. The website bills itself as something of a business or a brand, similar to Elementary OS, but I'm pretty sure it's just a one-man show, which is very similar to Farron OS. There are currently 4 different versions of Zorin, however we'll be looking at Zorin Core for this video. Based on the latest Ubuntu release, Zorin provides the option of pre-installing those NVIDIA drivers, which is great. The installer itself is a dedicated Ubiquiti install session with an option of dropping into a live session. Zorin OS is probably most well known for its elegant styling, which you can see right here in the installer. Besides the styling, there's not much different from the vanilla Ubuntu installer. Now, as far as the welcome app goes, there isn't one. This actually surprised me quite a lot because Zorin positions itself as a Linux distro for newcomers, and somebody that is brand new to Linux probably won't know what to do with themselves when they first log in here. Now, DF is telling us that a fresh Zorin Core install is a whopping 8.6 gigabytes, pretty sure that's the heaviest in the series so far, and Free is telling us that Zorin is sipping down a solid 1 gigabyte of memory at idle. What in the world? And when we go over to HTOP, we see that the Gnome services are eating the lion's share of the resources, quite heavy on the CPU resources too, with 143 tasks and a staggering 309 threads. Holy smokes. Now, Zorin OS has its own, well, let's be serious here, this is just Gnome with a very luxurious coat of paint. It's honestly very similar to Budgie in that it's got a panel with some custom-ish widgets, but pretty much all of the applications are stock Gnome apps. There are a pair of custom apps, one is like a KDE Connect bridge sort of thing, and the other is this appearance customizer, which is pretty cool, but it crashed pretty bad on me while I was testing it. It reminds me of a more polished version of Farron's customizer app, though I'm unsure which one came first. You can do quite a lot with the appearance app too, and all of the options maintain that Zorin OS feel to the desktop. I wish Elementary OS had something similar to this actually. As far as the styling goes, Zorin is probably the most aesthetically pleasing desktop I've ever had the pleasure of looking at. The icons, the color, the panel, the typefaces, it's all so damn good. The backgrounds, on the other hand, are less than good. They're lame. Pretty much all of them seem to be stock photos, high quality stock photos, but mostly of environment, and considering how gorgeous the desktop itself is, feels like a really missed opportunity to not throw in some amazing wallpapers here. Almost all of the default apps are what you would find on any vanilla Gnome install, like with Fedora or Debian. There are a few extras here and there, like some games, LibreOffice, but it's largely just Gnome stuff. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but these apps are anything but exciting. Some apps seem to have their own styling too, like some are dark when I've got the system theme set to light, like Gnome Videos, which is a Gnome app, so I'm unsure why it would have its own theme. In NeoFetch, we see a rather washed out Zorin OS logo along with the official name, Zorin OS 15.2. We've got the Linux kernel version 5.3, 2051 packages installed along with Bash 4.4. The desktop is showing up as Gnome 3.30 with the Gnome shell and some custom Zorin themes. The system came fully updated when I was capturing the footage, and the NVIDIA drivers were pre-installed during the distro install. We're running NVIDIA driver 440 here. In the way of external and removable media, Zorin was able to mount and dismount everything just fine, and if a device is mounted and the system is rebooted, Zorin automatically remounts it. I love that. Archive management proved to be an interesting test. The 7-zip archive didn't open. It extracted, which is really strange considering the bzip and zip files opened in the archive manager. And there didn't appear to be RAR file support out of the box, so I couldn't open the RAR file. Codec support and media playback was fine, but for the audio files, some of them opened in Gnome Videos and others opened in Rhythmbox, which is rather annoying. In the way of third-party app support, app images worked great, but Flatpaks were a little weird. It seems that FlatHub maybe wasn't fully configured by default, so it was causing the Software Center to act really screwy. It even tried to install this package despite not having access to FlatHub. Snaps are configured out of the box, but I didn't see a way of selecting the version or configuring the permissions for apps the way you can on vanilla Ubuntu. I had difficulties installing some apps too. Maybe the Software Center was jacked up because of the FlatHub debacle or something, but it wasn't very reliable for me. Now, OBS installed as a snap package from the Software Center and it worked fine. Unfortunately, after recording, I realized that the snap folder was missing or hidden. I'm pretty sure this is an option in Nautilus, but I could not figure out how to access that folder. Of course, I could access it from the terminal, but not from the file browser. For a distro that's aimed at new users, this is not good. For the network segment, I was pleasantly surprised to see a built-in option to share folders via the file browser. It even installed the required Samba stuff and plugged it all together. Unfortunately, that share was accessible from Zorin OS itself, and I created a file in that share thinking it was my Linux workstation, only to find that the nobody user just created a file in a local file system. Whoops. And also, my Windows laptop was not discovered on the network. I was able to access the laptop and my Linux workstation if I fed the file browser the direct path. Printer support was a little bit weird. For starters, you can't find the printer stuff from the start menu thing. Instead, you have to go to the Settings app and search for it there. That's a lovely Gnome feature. So if you look closely here, you'll see that Gnome is saying that my printer does not accept jobs. I have no idea why it's saying this because I was able to modify the printer and print a test page just fine without root. And jumping over to Bluetooth, I had problems here too. The Settings app did that thing where it connects, disconnects, and then connects again. But after playing a game for a while, Bluetooth just up and died, like it stopped working. I had to reboot the computer to get it working again, but yeah, that was a thing. So based on an issue I opened on GitHub for the series, I'm doing something a bit different with the gaming section. I'm going to run a benchmark for each game, but I'm going to show you the gameplay footage so you can see the gameplay and I can talk about any input or other issues that I had. In this case, we're looking at GTA 5 here, and the benchmark gave us a whopping 12 frames a second, which is not good. Mango HUD at the top left is reporting something like 30, but that's generous to say the least. Gunplay with the controller at these frame rates was like impossible, so I switched to the mouse and keyboard just in time to die. Next we'll take a look at Mad Max, which got 28 frames a second in the benchmark. The game ran great, but this is where Bluetooth died on me, so I'm using the mouse and keyboard for this. Mango HUD is reporting 28-29 frames a second too, so I'd say that benchmark is pretty damn accurate. And now it's time to look at those Geekbench benchmark scores. I'm going to compare Zorin to Manjaro here because I found the results really interesting. Zorin got lower scores compared to Manjaro when looking at the single core performance, but it did a tiny bit better than Manjaro on the multi-core side of things. And looking at the Vulkan scores, Zorin did just a bit better than Manjaro here too. So for the outro section, I want to start featuring or showcasing a free and open source game here, and we're looking at Speed Dreams, which is a fork of Torx. Controller support for this game was not good, and the controls were insanely sensitive. I also noticed that the brake didn't work as a trigger on the control, so I had to bind it to a button to make it work. The game ran well enough to play, but in some sections it bogged down just a little bit. So my thoughts on Zorin OS? You know, we saw a lot of issues in this video, and to be quite honest, I think a lot of them are due to Gnome rather than some misconfiguration in Zorin. I mean, it's basically Gnome with a very fresh and nice coat of paint. The appearance app is cool, but that's really all that Zorin OS offers. I wouldn't recommend it to newbies or beginners to Linux because of the issues I ran into, but also because it does somewhat resemble Windows, but it behaves nothing like it, especially the file manager. When distros aim to compete with Windows, they basically just make the panel or the desktop itself look like Windows, and that's it. Nautilus, the file manager for Gnome, behaves nothing like the Windows file manager, and that throws a lot of people off. Not to mention there's no welcome app, so a new user would have no clue what to do after logging in for the first time. So Zorin OS is pretty, but overall, I'm very underwhelmed by it. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Distro Delves, and if you want to contribute to the series or submit a new distro to review or update the script, hop on over to the Distro Delves repo and check it out. If you want to support me and the channel, you can become a patron and enjoy posts about behind the scenes stuff, history of the channel, and links to playlists with old and archived videos. I appreciate all your support, and thanks for watching.